Hello again, and on behalf of the Ancient Tree Forum, welcome to another webinar in the series covering the VetCert standard at practicing level. This session covers Units 10 and 12, which is Planning for Urban Development and Personal Skills. Unit 10 is a relatively short unit at practicing level. It's much more detailed at consulting level, but there's still a very small part of this that's important for the practicing VetCert specialist to be able to understand and show skills and knowledge in relation to. So this has one subunit here, which is demonstrate an understanding of how veteran trees should be considered during the planning and construction process in the country of examination. And this is important because there's a huge variation across Europe in how trees are dealt with in relation to urban development. And for the practicing arborist, you would be expected to show an understanding of the principles of tree protection on a construction or demolition site and how it applies to tree work operations. So this is much more in relation to how you undertake the work in terms of planning. And you should be aware of, for example, root protection areas and how they vary from what is considered good practice in relation to veteran trees and what's perhaps industry guidance in relation to veteran trees. And in this photograph you can see an example of the British standard, which is capped at 12 metres. The Ancient Tree Forum wants to have 15 metres if this tree is a metre in diameter, and that the roots are actually still being recorded at 23 metres. So it's just kind of having a sense of being able to show an understanding of the differences in terms of tree protection in relation to veteran trees, and knowing, for example, root protection areas and the do's and don'ts, if you like, within a root protection area. What is acceptable to do and what isn't acceptable to do. So this is just an example, I think, from an urban site which has actually created a tree protection area. That the fencing mustn't be moved, no machinery or plants or vehicles. This is all that you should be able to show awareness of what can and can't be done within a tree protection area, within an urban situation. There's a small video that we've mentioned before, the management of veteran trees in urban areas, that's relevant. Now, much of the management principles are the same for veteran trees in urban areas, but the challenges that they face are often much greater. So this helps and gives you a bit of background to this issue. So moving on, Unit 12, which is actually the last unit in the standard, is about personal skills. And there was a lot of discussion about whether this one should be included or not, but actually much of the steering group considered that many trees have been protected because people have convinced others to retain them. So this is actually divided into three subsections. Demonstrate effective communication skills, organisational skills, and that you recognise the limit of your professional abilities. We'll go through each of those in turn. And the first one, that you should be able to communicate effectively with the general public and other stakeholders about technical information. And as I've mentioned already, this issue of communication is often the same as conservation, and that you ought to be able to show that you can listen and that you can show respect for other people's views and that you can explain why or how and the reasons behind what you do. So there's often no legal requirement to undertake management on veteran trees, and very often it's that landowner that's paying for that. So being clear about communicating and showing respect for those people and being able to motivate why it's so important to retain our veteran trees is something that we would expect all VetCert specialists at all levels to be able to do. And also it's important for practitioners and consultants to be able to talk to one another and to have an openness in that communication. A good example of that is that a practitioner may have been up in the tree and see something that the consultant on the ground may not have spotted, and having the ability to discuss those issues in a respectful and open way is really important. And that feedback, no one person knows everything, and you must be able to listen and learn from others, including the local landowner, for example, the person who cares and watches that tree every day. Then we would expect the practitioners to also be able to demonstrate good organisational skills, and that includes, for example, keeping clear records of what you do. This is really important in terms of developing our understanding of veteranry. So we would expect even a practitioner to be able to keep detailed records of what they've done, take photographs, for example, and connect the photographs to the tree, and to ensure it's properly documented. And that's especially important in veteranary management because it may be different from the specification that you've got. I mentioned in one of the earlier webinars that there can often be quite a long time between when the management specification was formed. So when the consultant was on site doing that, it may be 5 years between that point and when you actually are going on site to undertake the work, and things may have changed. Thus, it's very important to document that change, and if you have had to do different management, why that's the case, so that this can be monitored later and we can learn from that experience. Then this is something that I think is really important for all of us, that we are humble in relation to veteranary management, and that we understand and acknowledge the limit of our professional knowledge and skills, and we seek help where necessary. And this is professional good practice. This is nothing that's particularly unique to veteranary management, but because it's very complex, it's perhaps more acute and happens more often. I mean, I, for example, am no good at identifying lichens. I can probably identify if there's a tree where there's lots of different species, and there it might ring a bell for me. Actually, I need to bring someone in to have a look at this. Or there are other skills that each of us know, but being aware of those limitations and knowing when to get help. Veterinaries do cross many boundaries: arboriculture, ecology, heritage. There's so many different aspects to veterinary management that this is especially important. So that's a very short introduction to those two units, and next time we'll cover the last unit, which is Unit 11, and that's veterinary management in all its aspects, and that is the largest unit, as you might expect. So see you next time.